Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Mr. V Teaches Math. And so today what we're going to be looking at is estimating sums and differences first. And you can kind of see that there's a map on the page here. But first of all, our goal for today is to use rounding skills to be able to estimate sums and differences. Sums just means you use adding, differences means you use subtracting. This map, kind of a neat map I pulled off the internet, and what it shows is shows the migration route for the whooping crane. Well, the whooping crane is the tallest bird in North America. It was quite endangered for a long time. They don't live in very many places in North America. They basically live in one place in Alberta in the summer. At least this is in Canada. There's a couple communities in the States. But basically, when they leave Alberta for their winter migration, they head all the way down to, where do they go? They go to a winter home in Texas, actually somewhere right on the Gulf of Mexico. And so what I've shown is the migration route from Alberta down to Texas. And it's broken down into distances. So it's the first leg of the journey, when they get to the border, is 1,250 kilometers. The next leg of the journey is about 630 kilometers. The next leg is, it's hard to see, but it's 390 kilometers. And the last part of the journey, sort of from Oklahoma into Texas, is 940 kilometers. The idea is that we want to use rounding to see how far it travels to its winter nesting ground in Texas. And so what I did was I showed sort of two ways to round these numbers. And so these are the four numbers that we've used. And here what I've done is they basically get rounded to, well, what do you think? This one gets rounded to the nearest 1,000. So 1,250 to the nearest 1,000 is 1,000, 630. And this is interesting, right? Because we're looking here, and then so this becomes our key digit. So because this is 5 or more, we're going to raise the score to 1,000. But this one, still rounding to the nearest 1,000, but because this number is less than 5, oddly enough, this number gets rounded down to 0. And then lastly, 940, same idea. Looking at this, 9 is the key digit, gets rounded to 1,000. So 1,000 plus 1,000 plus 1,000 is 3,000 kilometers. Now this one gets rounded a little bit differently. This one basically gets rounded to the nearest, whatever the biggest number is. So 1,000, nearest 100, nearest 100, nearest 100. Right? And so, actually, sorry, that's incorrect. These ones all get rounded to the nearest 100. This one's not the nearest 1,000. So this number gets rounded to 1,300, this one gets rounded to 600, 400, and then 900. And when you do that adding, you actually get a bit more of an exact answer, and it becomes 3,200. Okay? So, we often estimate sums and differences using rounding. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at this question, 5.78 subtract 0.328. And basically there are three different methods to rounding numbers, and I'm going to encourage us to use one of them, but I'm going to go through all three of them. So the first method is to round to the greatest place value of the greatest number, which means that we're going to round to the nearest 1, because that's the biggest place value of each of these numbers. Now, rounding to the nearest 1 for this number, this means that 5.78 gets rounded to 6. It also means that 0.328 gets rounded to 0 using our rules for rounding, which means that 6 minus 0 is 6. This one says to round to the greatest place value of the smallest number. So the biggest place value of the smallest number is the tenths. So that means if we're going to round 5.78 to the nearest tenth, it becomes 5.8. And this one becomes, using our rules for rounding, 0.3, which means that 5.8 minus 0.3 is 5.5. The last method that we talk about is to round to the greatest value of each number. So in this case, 5.78 gets rounded to the nearest 1, and 0.328 gets rounded to the nearest 10th, which means that this becomes 6. Don't let the decimal place fool you, it's just 6. And 0.328 gets rounded to 0.3. So 6 minus 0.3 equals 5.7. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to check the actual answer using my trusty calculator. And so 5.78 minus 0.328 actually equals 5.452. So this one actually gives us the closest estimate. All three estimates are correct. What I'm going to say for our class this year is that using this method, where each number gets rounded to the biggest value of the biggest digit in each number, that's going to be the one that we're going to use. And when we work on this tomorrow, when we get our practice assigned to us in class, that's going to be what I'm going to ask you to do, is to just round each number to the biggest place value in each number. And so that's what we're going to be practicing. Aside from that, I hope you guys have a great night, and I will talk to you tomorrow.